The Department of Justice has released a new report on the Tulsa Race Massacre more than 100 years after it took place. Unlike the department's first report issued in June 1921, the latest report asserted that the white mob's opportunistic violence became systematic and stemmed from racial bias. The report said Tulsa police deputized hundreds of white residents for the massacre and detained black residents in makeshift concentration camps. Kristen Clarke, the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, announced the findings today before she headed to Tulsa.
The Justice Department has issued a new report on the Tulsa Race Massacre. The 123-page report documents the findings made during a review and evaluation of the massacre conducted under the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crimes Act. The Tulsa Race Massacre stands out as a civil rights crime, unique in its magnitude, barbarity, racist hostility, and its utter annihilation of a thriving black community. In 1921, white Tulsans murdered hundreds of residents of Greenwood, burned their homes and churches, looted their belongings, and locked the survivors in internment camps. Until this day, the Justice Department has not spoken publicly about the race massacre or officially accounted for the horrific events that transpired in Tulsa. This report breaks that silence through a rigorous examination and a full accounting of one of the darkest episodes of our nation's past. The report lays bare new information and shows that the massacre was the result not of uncontrolled mob violence, but of a coordinated military-style attack on Greenwood. Now, more than 100 years later, there is no living perpetrator for the Justice Department to prosecute. But the historical reckoning for the massacre continues. This report reflects our commitment to the pursuit of justice and truth, even in the face of insurmountable obstacles. We issue this report in recognition of the courageous survivors who continue to share their testimonies, in acknowledgement of those who tragically lost their lives, and with appreciation for other affected individuals and advocates who collectively push us to never forget this tragic chapter of American history.
Folks, the report does identify by name some of the alleged lead perpetrators of the massacre. These include Claud Yellowhammer Cranfield, a suspect in a previous lynching of a black man, and Tulsa Police Captain George Blaine, a hardware store owner accused of breaking in and dealing out arms. Matt, I want to go to you. DOJ's scope here is limited. It's not like DOJ could say, oh, here you go, we can now award reparations. But at least having an official account of this is critically important. And hopefully, you've got a new mayor in Tulsa. Hopefully, this will give the survivors and the Justice for Greenwood group, more ammunition to pressure the city and the state of Oklahoma to do right by black folks in Tulsa.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of there being recognition. I like the idea of there being a report, but I think it's more ornamental than it is substantive. And that's the sad reality with this kind of thing, because one, as you've already mentioned, what I was thinking when I was listening to the segment, the first part of this, is there's not going to be any reparations. And the fact is, Brother Simmons and his team with Justice for Greenwood brought one of the most brilliant lawsuits I have ever seen in framing this as an ongoing nuisance when you have survivors. And you know what's problematic about this is we have precedent in the law where state legislatures and maybe the feds as well have found ways to change statutes of limitations, particularly in the sexual assault space, to allow survivors to bring claims long after their statute of limitations would have otherwise run. This is a prime example of that. What is really the substantive purpose of DOJ issuing a report if nobody can be held to account, including the government agencies that were involved in, malfeasance and not investigating this or not otherwise holding someone accountable? I like the idea of a historical record, but that does nothing to move the ball forward, particularly when you still have people who are, over 100 years old, who were little children when this happened, who have had to live with that trauma all these years and have no meaningful way to seek recompense. Until that happens, this to me is a Pyrrhic victory.
Well, obviously, I mean, it's not like, NOLA's not like it was going to be able to do the things that folks wanted to do. But at least you have a federal account. And again, what I hope it provides those folks who are fighting with something else to be able to use to push the city and to push the state. Because so far, even without this report, they've said, I don't give a damn.
Right. I feel a lot of ways about this. There's a part of me that's kind of sick and tired of this, of symbolism, especially when it comes to us, especially when it comes to our history in this country. And then as an educator, as an academic, I am incredibly worried about what is going to happen to facts, to stories and narratives like this. What is going to happen to Black history over the course of the next, 4 years as education completely gets dismantled and reconstructed in a way that will push more alternative facts. So there's a part of me that sees this as a first step towards maybe another lawsuit that can be structured from this lawsuit that maybe can provide survivors with some sort of financial reparation. I don't know, but I am very worried about when it comes to the Black community historically in this country, that consequences of people who have perpetrated horrible crimes against us hardly are ever held to account. And secondly, I am very concerned about what's going to happen, not just to primary education, secondary education, but also higher education in this country, and how there seems to be a push to specifically hide Black history in this country because people don't want to reconcile with the reality. So I feel different ways about this, Roland.
But so here's my whole deal here, Michael, how I look at it. One, you can't hide what's now in a document. Now, you could ignore it, but the reality is you have this official federal account. You know going in, there are limitations. You know that going in. But I would rather have this than not have it. It wasn't until 2018 that students in Oklahoma in the school books were taught what happened in Tulsa. It wasn't in their books for almost 100 years. And so is it symbolic? Sure, you can call it symbolic. I get that. But I still would rather have the Civil Rights Division do this report, issue the report, have it documented in folks' hands, than not to have it.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note a few things here. Number one, it was President Joe Biden who made June 1st a National Day of Remembrance, I think it was called, for the Tulsa Race Massacre. OK, number one. So we need to commemorate that every June 1st and teach the history. Number two, is extremely important to have this documented also by the federal government. Now, something like this would never happen under the Trump administration. I just want people to understand that, because these are facts that can also be incorporated into the school system in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But this needs to be taught in schools all across the country. When it comes to specifically Tulsa, and trying to repair the damage as much as they can and give economic opportunities, business opportunities, things like that. They need to deal with that. There's a movement across the country dealing with municipal reparations. OK, and I did a presentation to the Detroit Reparations Task Force here in Detroit, March 2nd, 2024. And it deals with understanding what the local government can do to provide opportunities to citizens that are there today to try to repair this damage. So whether it's business grants, whether it's expanding city contracts to quote unquote minority owned businesses, things of this nature. they need to explore all those options, okay? And one of the most important things that gets left out of this history, and I've done lectures on this history, and I'm in a documentary about the Tulsa Race Massacre as well, is that these brothers and sisters rebuilt the Greenwood district after the race massacre with their own dollars. And they got help from the surrounding black townships, because there are about 50 black townships in Oklahoma because of migration out there. Is one that, even though it was horrible what happened, there's another success story because we rebuilt it. And that oftentimes gets left out of the conversation and how we teach this history.
There's going to be they're going to discuss this, take place in Tulsa tomorrow. Again, I hope that the activists, the lawyers, and others can utilize this as a renewed push to demand accountability from the city of Tulsa, from the state of Oklahoma, and we should be forcing. Let me be real clear. I believe that we as African Americans should be forcing every city, every state, and the federal government to have an official count of all of the massacres that impacted our people. And if anyone calls them superficial, symbolic, I don't care, because the history needs to be documented. And the problem that we've always had, this country has conveniently ignored it. And so if you have an administration that's not going to ignore it, then so be it. That's what needs to happen. It needs to happen at every single massacre that took place.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you helped build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on Start Engine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.